It was Christmas Eve in the small, snow-draped town of Frosthaven, a place so picturesque it looked like a holiday postcard. The streets were lined with twinkling lights, wreaths hung on every door, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Families gathered around their fireplaces, exchanging laughter and tales of Christmases past. Yet for 17-year-old Ellie, something felt off. Ellie had always loved Christmas, but this year was different. Ever since the old house across the street had been sold, she'd felt an unshakable unease. The house had been abandoned for years, its creaky floors and broken windows the stuff of local ghost stories. But now a strange man had moved in, and the once dead home glowed with warm lights and holiday decorations. Ellie watched the house from her bedroom window, her breath fogging the glass. The man, tall and pale, had arrived without a moving truck or any visible belongings. Yet the house was now furnished, complete with a towering Christmas tree that could be seen through the front window. Even stranger, he didn't seem to leave the house, not even for groceries or mail. Ellie's mother. "Ellie, come down! Dinner's ready!" Reluctantly, Ellie tore her gaze from the house and joined her family. Her parents and younger brother Max were chatting excitedly about the presents they'd opened the next morning. Ellie forced a smile, but her mind remained across the street. That night, as the clock struck midnight, Ellie woke to a soft sound. A low, melodic humming drifted through the air. She sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the house across the street. She crept to her window, pulling aside the curtain. The man was standing in his living room, his back to the window. He swayed gently, as if dancing to the tune he hummed. The Christmas tree's lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Ellie's breath caught when she noticed something else, a dark figure standing outside the man's house, just beyond the glow of the porch light. It was tall and thin, with limbs too long to be human. Its head tilted unnaturally, as if watching the man inside. Ellie stumbled back from the window, her chest tightening. She grabbed her phone and took a shaky picture of the scene, but when she looked back, the figure was gone. The next morning, Ellie decided to investigate. She told her parents she was going to visit a friend and walked across the street, her boots crunching in the snow. As she approached the house, the festive decorations looked wrong up close. The wreath on the door was made of blackened twigs, and the candy canes lining the walkway were twisted into jagged shapes. Ellie hesitated, then knocked. The door swung open on its own. "Ellie, hello!" she called, stepping inside. The warmth of the house enveloped her, but it felt stifling, almost oppressive. The air was thick with the smell of gingerbread, so strong it made her gag. The living room was immaculate, with stockings hung over the fireplace and gifts piled under the tree. But the ornaments on the tree were grotesque. Tiny, doll-like faces with hollow eyes stared out from the branches. A deep voice asked. Ellie jumped, spinning around. The man stood behind her. His pale face stretched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Up close, he looked almost artificial, like a wax figure. Ellie said, I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." The man replied, "How kind of you. Please come in. Stay a while." Before Ellie could respond, a loud thud came from upstairs. She froze. The man continued, My guests, they tend to be restless." Ellie said, "I should get going." The man's expression darkened. That would be wise. She bolted outside, slamming the door behind her. As she ran home, she glanced over her shoulder and saw the man watching her from the window, his smile unnervingly wide. That night, Ellie couldn't sleep. The humming started again, louder this time. It seeped through her walls, vibrating in her bones. Unable to bear it, she grabbed her coat and flashlight and slipped outside. The snow reflected the moonlight, casting an ethereal glow over the street. Ellie crept toward the house, her breath visible in the freezing air. She crouched by a window, peering inside. The man was no longer alone. A group of people sat around the dining table, their faces pale and vacant. They stared blankly ahead, not touching the feast laid out before them. The man stood at the head of the table, humming his haunting tune. Ellie's flashlight flickered, and she cursed under her breath. When she looked back at the window, the man's face was inches away, staring directly at her. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Ellie screamed and ran. She didn't stop until she was back in her room, locking the door behind her. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, but the line was dead. A soft knock came at her window. Ellie turned slowly. The man stood outside, his hand pressed against the glass. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Behind him, the dark figure she'd seen before loomed, its twisted form barely distinguishable from the shadows. Ellie backed away, tears streaming down her face. The window shattered, and the man stepped inside, his movements unnaturally smooth. The man said, "Ellie, it's time to join the celebration." The dark figure slid into the room behind him, its hollow eyes fixed on Ellie. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the tree in the man's living room, its branches now adorned with ornaments that looked disturbingly human. The next morning, Frosthaven was eerily quiet. Snow blanketed the streets and no one stirred from their homes. The house across the street stood empty once more, its decorations gone as if they had never been there. Ellie's family searched for her, but she was never found. In her bedroom, they discovered a single ornament on her bedside table, a tiny, doll-like face with hollow eyes that seemed to follow them wherever they went. And on Christmas Eve, the humming began again.